find the sites by June, and then while we're locking down the sites, we also will start to talk about what the community organizing plan looks like for the sites that are technically and financially viable by July. And the idea is that once we could move through this, we have all the blue arrows and the purple arrows moving forward, then we can have everything lined together by August so we can install by September. Daunting, again, we're here to work together to make this happen so we can actually start to build a bunch of community-owned resilience hub for energy resilience for all Californians. People in our community can start to become providers without waiting for companies and nonprofit to come and save us. So what sites do we look for? We know every single site is very different. Sometimes we need to learn a little more about the site to be able to know what kind of proposal to send. And I just want to recap too from last week. We spent 90 minutes to really talk about what sites mean and how we could make what kind of proposal based on the location of the site. I wanted to highlight again that our commons model allows anyone to become a participator of the energy transition through community organizing, because we have disconnected the ownership of land from the ownership of power through our pilot site. So with the upcoming fire season and the pandemic that's still happening, who knows how long we're going to be sheltering in place for, every single one of us can actually play a huge role to ensure energy resiliency, even if we're at home, because we know so many people in our life that can help work together and make this happen. So looking at the site, we can get a sense of what to offer the property owners by knowing three things. First thing, what the site is. Is it a residential home? Is it a grocery store? Is it a house of worship? Is it a manufacturing, growing plant, or a nonprofit that can open their office when crisis hits? What the site is makes a huge difference in terms of what we can offer. And then how much energy the site uses or is willing to use. Like we can add on more demand once we try to figure out like what they want to see. So because these sites will be buying power from People Power Solar Cooperative, the more energy the site consumes, the more money we will be making as a cooperative, which means the more wealth we can spread to the community. Because we're a cooperative, we're spreading wealth to everyone. And then the third part is where the site is. Location matters a lot. The location of the site determines a lot on the type of incentives that we can tap into right now. There's more than $500 million available for equity-related solar plus storage. And there's so many more incentives and programs that's out there as an opportunity for us to tap into, allowing us to build wealth for all of our community. The more money we can help save for the property owners, the more money we can spread to the community. So that kind of like show you like these three top questions really changes the picture of what the site looks like. This is exactly why we need you to talk to the property owners and convince them that they need to start thinking about whether they're interested in becoming a provider of energy or just going solar with People Power by having solar and battery storage. And when they do that, there is a huge opportunity to build wealth for the community. So we want to start engaging conversations with them about this and have them fill out the technical viability form, which Grayson will go through very soon. But so now, if you know a bunch of properties out there and you want to really know like what kind of properties to really focus on, we have two suggestions. Number one, high energy users, you say I can't even type well. High energy user, somebody who uses a lot of energy, again, means they will buy a lot of energy from People Power. It creates a lot of opportunity for us to bring the wealth to the community around them, or even just anyone, anywhere in California. When people buy into People Power Solar Cooperative, we are spreading wealth to anyone, no matter how much wealth we have. And the second thing that you can also focus on is a location in the area that has a lot of incentive. Last week, we'll look at some maps and talk through different incentive that's happening. So disadvantaged community zone, I'll share this PowerPoint presentation after this call. You can click into it. It's also in the People Power Solar Cooperative Owner Playground, our online platform. Grayson wrote a post about this. You can find a map, enter the address, and see if it's in the disadvantaged community zone, which has a lot of incentives. There's also the power safety power shutoff, public safety power shutoff, and the brownout area that we actually have access to the map for, that would also allow us to tap into creating more savings to the system, which means more wealth for the community. So these are the two like good like guide for you to see how you want to look at sites. And you can use maps to see, but honestly, all you have to do is just kind of get the details into the technical analysis form, or have the property owners to share that information with us, so that we can actually know the details of that. And by the way, I'm seeing chats popping up and I can't see the chat. So please interrupt me anytime if that's something that pertains to how fast I'm talking or how complicated I am speaking.
Hey, this is Brandi jumping in. Crystal, how you doing?
Hello. Doing well.
Good, thanks for all your information. I'm needing to add my information into the meeting in moving forward. I just have had a speed dating meeting, and all transparency with you all, needing to shift. And I talked with Marquita with East Oakland Collective. I believe she brought to the owner's attention around a site that we're looking at cultivating in East Oakland. But I know you had me on the agenda for a specific piece, and I'm wondering, can I get to that piece, or how can we fold that in?
Yeah, this is it right now. Perfect timing. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So on the screen right here, we have stories from People Power owners. This is the third part of the agenda. We basically want to hear from People Power owners who actually has talked to property owners before. And we have lined up Jessica Tovar, who actually found our first ever property owners, who actually owns the only residential system in the entire state of California that is owned by individual humans like us in the community in the form of a cooperative. And so Jessica did that. We can hear from her. And I don't know, Brandi, do you want to go first, or do you want to go into an order that would make?
I would love to go, but if Jessica, like, it feels like, to make the premise, I'm a time crunch. I have a little human.
Okay, sure. No, you can go first. So we have some prompts, if that's helpful.
Yeah, please.
For you. So basically it'll be great to hear from you. So for those who are not aware of Brandi, who's also our governance owl, which is on the board, our governance director here, also has been actually involved in a lot of communicating with the East Oakland community around the People Power Solar Cooperative. So here we would love to hear from you the answer to 3 questions. How do you choose which property owners to talk to? How did you bring up using the property owner's property for community-owned energy? And what questions did the property owners ask you? And how did you respond to that? Just kind of help people online understand what that experience is like.
I want to go back to the original piece that you said. It's not about people power going into the community and going. It's about the community inviting in. So for me, I think that first question is how do you choose a site? My work in community is pretty deep around food sovereignty in particular. So, one thing when you say, well, how do you choose a site? What are you working on currently? And how does it become a node or an extension? And is there a need there? So really kind of questioned based on my work in food sovereignty, like, what would it look like to work with this group? Because they're in the chain of food sovereignty. And how can this align with supporting what food sovereignty looks like? And so like that would be a potential way to choose a site. It has been a opportunistic and challenging process to get our community, and I say get our community to understand energy and even the importance of why do we want to have ownership of our energy. I know often I hear Crystal say, like, we just want the community to organize, and I'll push back with Crystal and say the community's organized. We just need resources, right? Like this idea that people just need to learn how to organize and be cooperative. And it's like, well, I don't know if that's the case. Let's not continue to do that. But what are the resources? So we kind of started our pieces off over at the active, what was that center we were at, Crystal? In Deep East Oakland. I'm trying to remember. You were there, young lady here. I'm trying to find you. I'm flipping through the phone to see the person.
The center.
You
Not
know
New
who I'm
Life.
talking
Is
about.
it New Life?
No, here she is. There, Margie.
Was it the Rainbow Center or was it the Tasa Faranga?
Right, Tasa Faranga. And well, we first started out, we met with Margie and her team of eco folks who are already working on pollution in the community, right? Like folks are already doing work that intersects with what we're doing. And it's really about seeing like, what's the purpose, and does this solar idea and collective power make sense in what we're already doing? Which is where I will also say it was a challenge because of where people are coming from, where they are, with what things are happening day to day that challenge them to think about solar. One of the other bigger pieces was like the roof. Roofs weren't sustainable enough for people to actually get solar. So before we could even think about ownership, people were instantly like, I don't even think my roof, I need a new roof. And so that was something. So now backing up, and Marquita, I don't know if you're on the phone, actively around cooperatives, collectives, folks that are doing work. What do they need to do the work more efficiently, and how can energy come into that? And how do we work with community members to do that already? And so, we talked about what does it look like having battery backup stations, and particularly in churches in East Oakland that are doing constant like pop-up and events and community spaces, community events to support critical resources. And so, we're in the beginning stages of that, but I think that's a like that when we talk about, and as Crystal said earlier, places that use a lot of energy, then means that we can gain more energy and then we give more wealth. Then the idea of working with a collective or a church that has a congregation could support us in that, and working with a zone of folks, meaning a ecosystem of people, is also how we're looking at taking this next stages. How did I bring up using the property owner's property for a community owned? It's a cohort kind of thing, the proper, I don't necessarily bring it up, the property owner brings it up. So let me just say it that way. Like I'm coming to a property owner saying, do you have community that you think would be interested in this? So it's not about, I didn't have to bring up using the property. I'm just saying, I know a property owner, let's just say, for example, I knew a young lady in East Oakland. She's like, I could use my house for it. And I said, well, great. Now, how can you get your community around it, right? And that was a little bit of a challenge for her to get her community around it, which led me back to say, then why doesn't our model just change, being that all of us on this call are owners of this? And if we find a site, then we become owners of more sites versus us asking the community to go out and then organize your more community around the site. So there's been challenges with that process. The property owner really wanted to know in just how much does it cost? How much does it cost? How much does it cost? This is where we still are in the weeds. Well, it depends. It's, permaculture. It depends on the technical analysis before we can start talking about how much it costs. And that was the unknown that was a little bit uncomfortable for community. I'll just be very transparent there. I think I went back and forth with Crystal about like, how do we just have we created cartoons to kind of show this idea and concept, because it was still very, like when I hear Crystal talking, it kind of mushes all together at some point, to be real transparent with you, Crystal. And like, how do we go, this is what this is about. But what I heard Crystal say, and maybe you said before, that I think our strategy moving forward feels a little bit easier, in particular in time of pandemic, is how do you want to go solar with People Power Solar Co-op? Am I correct, Crystal? You said that? Which changes it to, which moves it out of, we're trying to go to a community member, ask them to organize their community to own the solar on top of their roof, versus us as our collective, us right here on the phone, are going to community members who we recognize have power, energy, and roofs that can be used, and we are going to be the ones to invest in it. So like we go find a house on 82nd, and the sister who owns it says yes, and we say, well, what do you want to do with that energy? Like, we're collective, and you do the analysis, and we say it's $50,000. And then we come back to the group and say, y'all, we got a new site. We need to raise $50,000 for this site, right? And so that shifts it all the way. Then we try to get to the community, and we're trying to go tell them to do all of this extra stuff, because folks in the community are you know, hand in foot. And so, yeah, I'm just hoping this shift can maybe support the concept and the idea for people to understand the importance of us having ownership over our energy. Like, because there lies my biased intention of being a part of this collective, you all, is to allow us to have sovereignty of our energy. And how do we do that? And I feel that if we're using an approach of saying, let's go solar with us, and we're taking the ownership, and later our beloved community is going to trickle in as it makes sense, because everybody can become an owner of this anyway, then I would love for us to do that so that we can get our folks in sovereign energy lifestyles.
Thank you. So yeah, those are really good points, and thank you for sharing that experience. So right now, our plan here is to have People Power owners to start talking to property owners, so then they can start submitting into the technical analysis sheet, so we can start to give answer on what they can offer. And I want to just open the floor up to see if anyone has any questions for Brandi.
I do.
Go ahead.
So Crystal said that there was like, I don't know what, $500 million, $50 million or whatever, a lot of money in this. So my understanding is, if it's like a deep East Oakland community, that's where the money, whether they've got a crappy roof or not, that they're going to be eligible for the money. And I think that with your approach, Brandi, which is good, is just say, okay, we're going to come in, we got the money, we'll put it on your roof, and it'll be a cooperative effort. And then as people want, they'll come in, and then they'll see that, oh, look at that, their neighbor got this great thing on her roof for free, and she is offering storage and extra energy benefits to everybody else. How can I get in on that? So am I
Exactly.
right about that?
Yep, you're right there, Margie.
I didn't hear.
East Bay Clean Energy. Is anyone from East Bay Clean Energy on this call?
Sorry, before we move on to that, Margie, did you hear what Brandi said?
No.
You're right, Margie. That's what I was thinking. I just think that would be a better engagement process based on our community at this time.
Yeah. So I'll respond to what you're saying, Ryan, soon. So right now, based on what we've learned so far, the plan here is to get all of us to talk to property owners, and we're hoping by talking to Brandi and just hearing stories from other People Power owners who's talked to other property owners, people who haven't started could feel a little more comfortable around reaching out to property owners and say, hey, you can go solar with People Power, or get battery storage with People Power that's owned by all of us. We want to make sure you can feel comfortable doing that, and hearing stories directly from people who's already done it will be great. And so if you have any questions before we let Brandi go and take care of the children and herself and just connect with nature and stuff, please ask her now before we free
Hey,
her.
hey, it's Keita. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Kita.
Hey, what's up? Yeah. Hey, Brandi.
Hey, hey.
Hey, just wanted to ditto everything you said, and yeah, me and Brandi did talk. And in terms of East Oakland, I haven't been engaging folks around energy as much as Brandi, but just based off of our conversation, talking about how the Black Culture Zone can be kind of a staple entity that help kind of distribute the education and information and physical infrastructure around energy, and looking at how we can, like she said, use some of the churches. We have some city, some agreements with some city lots that we're gonna have once COVID goes away. And so, yeah, we just definitely want to integrate energy and how we use it and get people more aware, just to make the education a little bit more culturally appropriate and like seamless. Once you're connected to how people use it every day, again, like the fact that COVID got us all sheltered in and it's only halfway decent because we all do have internet and energy. But if that was that's how we can connect with folks, as one example. But so yeah, just wanted to ditto with what Brandi said.
Yep. Give thanks, Keita. I'm seeing us manifest. Unfortunately, I know pandemics push us, but it's like I've been on several calls, and my biggest just affirmation I want to leave even our group with is that, you know, we are the answer to the ancestors' prayer. We have been stabbing at doing work to create sovereignty around food, around energy, around housing. And it's not time to abandon ship, but more so just invest deeper in some of our processes so that we can actually create the things. And we have really wonderful, great concepts, and now it's time to create the things and manifest those things. And I'm not talking about like more waste, you know, because haste equals waste, but I'm talking about the design process that we've taken. How many years now, Crystal, has this process been, we've been developing this process?
2 years, more like, yeah.
No, East Bay, no. Like people power, solar power is more than some 2
Yeah, it's 2 years. It's 2 years.
years. My phone, no. 2018?
Yeah.
What, how many a year before that, before it didn't just happen in 2018?
I guess Selk has been talking about this kind of model since 2015. I don't know, Grayson, do you remember?
Yeah, 2015. I was gonna say, give it the real due, because like, you know, stuff come out, but it be you know,
Yeah.
brewing. It didn't just happen. And so I just want us to remind ourselves as owners of energy in this ideal, in this time, it's time to pressure even more folks to invest in things that are going to support our community directly. And we have created the container. We have a container, just pour on into it. That's all.
Right, thank you. And we have Jessica from Local Clean Energy Alliance who's been pushing this. I mean, their organization has been doing this for 10 years too. But valuing Brandi's time, any more questions for Brandi before we let her go?
All right, family. We do got email addresses and stuff in the playground, so people could call. We ain't got to be in a meeting and just send me a text saying, hey, girl, you know, we could just check in with one another. I love that. Share a recipe or
Brandi.
something. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
We all
Be
sheltered
well.
in place. Peace and blessings. Thank y'all, family.
Ashe.
Thank you.
Peace. All right, now.
Great. Jessica with Local Clean Energy Alliance, just a quick background. When we were starting to tinker with the idea for People Power Solar Cooperative, we were working with Jessica, Franki, who's also on the line, and Yvette and Vivian Huang from APEN, and Yvette's from Baobab, which is a Bay Area organization for Black-owned businesses, and then Angela Scott from Communities for Better Environment. And we were trying to figure out how to find sites to test out this cooperative model, and Jessica found our very first property owner. So I'll hand it over to Jessica to help share with us on like what it's like to talk to someone about going solar with people power for the wealth of community.
Hi everyone, Jessica Tovar, coordinator of East Bay Clean Power Alliance. And if you don't know who we are, we're the ones who pretty much advocated for a community choice program in the East Bay, which is actually called East Bay Community Energy. And so pretty much in terms of recruiting folks to be part of People Power Solar Cooperative, you know, a lot of it really for me was just in casual conversation, talking to community folks. At the time we had the Reverend Ken Chambers on the Community Advisory Committee for East Bay Community Energy. We had recruited him to play that role to really advance the emphasis on needing to get East Bay Community Energy to commit to doing local clean energy build out so that we can get community benefits through the East Bay Community Energy Program. And so Reverend Ken was somebody who I was working very closely with at the time, and I mentioned to him what we were trying to do. And he was very interested. I don't know if you know, he's based in West Oakland, his church, Westside Missionary Baptist. But the actual church that he works out of is really a trailer. It's not like, you know, a building, a permanent building with a good roof. And so at the time I was like, you know, I wonder, is it possible for us to do like a ground mount? Or maybe it'd be possible to recruit another church to get this thing going. So at the time I did a presentation, a very short presentation to the Alameda County Interfaith Council. And so really, I was hoping to recruit, you know, a church that would be interested in having, you know, this installment for the cooperative on the roof of one of their churches. And I did that presentation, and I handed out information, and I followed up via email after doing that presentation. And I knew Laura Jo in other spaces, but she was actually at this same meeting to do a presentation update on what was happening with NOCO Oakland. So she heard the presentation, got some of the literature, and actually responded to my email and said, actually, I looked at this, I'm really interested. Let's talk more. And so I wasn't actually directly recruiting Laura Jo, but in making that presentation to a huge amount of church people, Laura Jo showed interest, and we were able to take it from there and check out her building and the roof and see how we can make this happen. I think what was really helpful too, you know, because folks in our movement already understand the value of doing this kind of project and participating, not as being, and I will add to what Brandi was saying, not just about going solar and having solar on your own roof, but actually going community solar and having that vision that we wanted to see through East Bay Community Energy, where we're actually putting solar on buildings that actually provide solar to other folks who may not own their roof, or for example, are renters, right? And so how do we access local solar? Because local solar and local wind and the storage, those are our modes for us to power our communities and have access, even if we don't own our building, right? So that's the whole premise. So Laura Jo was on board, and that worked out. You know, in casual conversation, I think in a random meeting with Mary Rose at Local Clean Energy Alliance, I was like, yeah, we're looking for people to do this. And then she was just like, well, why don't you do it on my house? And so fortunately, you know, I think we don't need to go that far out yet. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that the intent is to build out our local community and to share this resource so that we can power our communities with true clean energy. Because like, as it stands right now, we're really dealing with like all community choice programs are literally right now considering taking nuclear energy from PG&E. And that's a huge problem because that was never, ever the intent about for community choice programs to do that, right? So yeah, I think just casual conversation. I think the planned power shutoffs are a great talking point, talking about access and, you know, the way that we really need in our communities, because at the end of the day, it's not about personal ownership. And a lot of these programs really cater to that whole thing and really cater to industrial scale or municipal, and that's great and everything, but if it isn't shared and if it isn't in our communities and if it isn't powering our homes and our resilience, it isn't real, right? And so that's what's really important. I think we need to just, you know, have this discourse in the context of a pandemic and in the context of the wildfires. I mean, now more than ever, our whole narrative about energy being a human right is even more justified now more than ever. And so we just need to continue talking about this. And it, again, I think it was said earlier, like, we just need the resources. We know what the solutions are for our communities. We just need the resources, the money, the how to get these things in our community. And that's really what we're working towards. That's it.
Thank you. I think it will make sense for us to just kind of have all those owners with experience share, and then whoever has more thoughts could ask questions just to move this faster. Franki, do you want to share some of your experience when we're looking for sites? Just reaching out to property owners, you know, I know you have a lot of sisters that you were reaching out to before too, just kind of talk about how you bring up this opportunity for their property to be hosting a community-owned energy, and what kind of questions and they ask you or how you respond to them, kind of thing.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to say that I am one of the founding members of the ACES anti-displacement chapter, which has had its hand in some really major political stuff when it comes to housing. We were organizing tenants though. When it came to organizing homeowners, it was before my time, but what I have heard is it reached a certain point where people wouldn't work together anymore, or they relied on the legal system. Stop. So sorry about that. That was my son. So I would just say that really we have to find, so this is not my expertise. However, I would say we need to find pivot points of privilege or pivot points of mutual aid or mutual, where everyone grows, and make sure that we tell people those things, you know, like it's gonna be good for them because they're gonna save money. It's gonna be good for us because we're gonna get to reroute electricity away from PG&E. It's gonna be good for us because we get to own it. If they want to own it, then that's good. I think Brandi was absolutely right when she was saying we just have to find the one houses at a time. To me, it's just like door knocking. It's like finding the needles in the haystack. We did a lot of that when I founded the ACES anti-displacement chapter. So I think that that's the best way, unless it's in your specific community. And I'm still trying to work with this church on the side of the road. I haven't gotten very far, but I did go by there several times. But that's the kind of work that needs to be done, I think.
Thank you, Frankie. Kansas, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me? It might be a little windy.
Yeah. So, Kansas Kansas here has been working on, he created this Ingleside Community Power, basically bringing People Power's model into his neighborhood to try to get more people to come together and collectively own energy just within the neighborhood. And he's been talking to different property owners. And if you can share some of your insights with these 3 questions, that would be lovely.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and it's Friday. Thanks for everyone hanging in there. I on a walk too myself. I was in meetings all day. So I think the first question is how did you reach out or find people that were interested in sites? So I think there were 2 really main high level ways that you can go about doing it. And I think one is way more efficient than the other. The first one is talk to your friends, talk to people that are already in your own communities, your own groups. You already have a relationship with them. You can casually talk about it. It does take sometimes a couple conversations to like really get to through someone. So if they're a friend, you can do it casually over time, which really I think is very helpful. And so you can be like, hey, you own your place, right? Like, wouldn't that be cool if like the community owned it? So I guess I'm jumping into the second question, which is how do you bring in the fact that a community is going to be owning the solar, and really how is that different than other models that they're presented with or may be exploring? So again, there's really a big matrix here because, right, you could have a homeowner that or you could even just have someone that's a renter, doesn't even have a roof. So, you can't really fill out a form for them, unfortunately, right now. But if someone owns their property and they have a roof, they are a potential person. Sorry, I forgot where I was going with this, but the idea is they could have a good roof, bad roof, whatever. But the idea is, especially right now, what we're trying to do is really just get anyone that is interested and actually owns their property like on the list, right? Because as other people were saying, it's like a needle in the haystack, and the bigger our haystack is, the more likely we are to find needles where we can find good investments to help actually different owners based on different dimensions, as we talked about earlier. So one way I bring in the community aspect is, depending on the person, sometimes you can just pitch it like I just did, where they're a friend and you say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if our community kind of owned this? If you're talking to an owner that maybe isn't like necessarily in your community, maybe it is a friend too, and they've already looked into some solar options like Sunrun or Tesla, you can say, hey, I know you've been looking into solar, and wouldn't it be cool instead of like Tesla or Sunrun taking the money from the installation that they were going to do on your house for zero cost and letting our community actually do that for you instead? So I think those are like the 2 people I've mostly ran into are people that are already kind of looking into solar, and you can kind of relate to Sunrun or Tesla as a model, but instead of, giant corporations, it's the community. And then if it's, your friend or whoever, I think you can just casually talk about how cool it would be, for all of us to participate in owning energy because it's so super important. And what was the last question?
What questions did they ask you and how did you respond?
So again, depending on the person, you're going to get a whole bunch of different questions from all different domains of life, from like, but generally speaking, the most common one, like Brandi was saying, is how much is it going to cost? And if you're talking to someone that's going to be a potential site host, for them, it's actually going to be zero cost, right? Because the community is going to take on that cost, AKA the cooperative, right? So when you're talking to them, you can actually say it will be zero cost to them personally. And the idea is that we're going to get the community together to help put those panels on their house. So that's how I usually answer that. Another one is okay, well, if you guys are going to, if I don't own these solar panels, who's liable for all these panels? What if they get damaged? What if, some accident happens? Well, they don't need to worry about it. Again, it's all in the cooperative. That's another one I get asked a lot. And yeah, those are the ones that come to my head. Any questions?
Well, it's okay. We'll get through all the people sharing stories, and then we can get the questions in.
Okay, cool.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I know that also Ranil has been reaching out, having conversations with HOAs for solar installs. I think it would be great to hear from Ranil too, if there's anything you'd like to share with us on what you learned from these, like just from the HOA perspective. You might be muted right now.
Yeah, it's not that I have been speaking to multiple HOAs. I just happen to be living in one and had always wanted solar power with the intention of being able to have access and share. So many years ago, before I even got to know People Power, I had wanted solar panels on my roof. And at that time, there was tree shading. It was also the first time I had heard of grid alternatives. So I went through a process with them in order to try and get solar panels on my roof in a way to share and tell a story to my community. And I am located in South Berkeley, and in an area which is like the main intersections is Ashby and San Pablo. So it's not necessarily on those maps we looked at as disadvantaged communities, but these are all neighborhoods that I'm sure there are people who need support and will benefit from any shared resources, quite naturally. However, my first attempt was before there was a People Power. And that was kind of failure on my part because I worked with grid alternative to get estimates. And then I tried to propose it to my five home residential homeowners association, and they had so many questions such as what if something happens to our roof, are we covered, how much is this going to cost us, what do we get out of it, why are you doing it, kind of questions. So it was not what I expected, and I wasn't ready anyway. I had no cash to outlay, and I gave up on that project. Then down the road comes People Power, and I get encouraged again and want to do the same thing of putting panels up, or looking even more ambitious into cell power at times of outages, instead of rolling back into the grid and so forth. So anyways, experimentally what I did was, I know I have to come back to, did I talk to the homeowners and what my experience has been in talking to people about this, which has been very little, because my intention was always to get solar power for myself and make that the story that others will follow. But now I have changed my approach because of People Power. And now what I did recently was to get estimates from just another private company, where they would come in and try to do a major sale. So I let them do that just because I wanted the experience of being sold to. And it was a nearly good sell until the fact of the matter being that the two individuals who came barely knew anything about solar power, solar energy, technical stuff, nothing. They were just car salespeople selling solar power kind of stuff, right? At least a car salesperson knows about the four wheels on a vehicle. These guys didn't know much. So that was a definite disadvantage to them. because I just really went through the motions in even signing on with them and getting a contract and learning more about it. But the bottom line was it was zero down, but that doesn't mean it doesn't cost me anything. It would have cost me like $10,800, and for the first 25 years they were projecting major savings because I would own the panels in 25 years. And I was saying, like, I'm not even planning on being around 25 years. What if that happens? Oh no, whoever else owns the home will own the um, panels and so forth. So anyway, the car sales thing didn't work for me very much. I never intended to go with them to begin with. I just wanted an experience and I got it. So I'm hoping that maybe that's the approach I'm taking, is learn more about what people power can do as a community for the communities, while having some higher ambitions about who should be actually partnering with us from the community. That's why I have kind of many ideas and sites, but I haven't spoken to all of them. I intend to want to get coached enough to have the guts to go out there and pitch. But for now, as a homeowners association that is located in South Berkeley, that is built on Northern California land trust property, it made a lot of sense for me to convince my neighbors, immediate neighbors, to learn that it is not something that is dangerous, something that is costly. And what I have been trying to tell them is that it is power that also can be shared. So while the picture is getting clear to me, I think I'll be better at pitching this in the future. But basically, I haven't done much of talking to people and sharing the idea because I haven't been sitting in one place for a long time now. It's been like 40 years of running around crazy, and now here I am stuck in the house. But so I'm thinking things out a little more, trying to learn new tricks. I'm an old dog, but can do a couple of hoops and jumps and stuff like that. I'm trying to figure it out. Then how did I bring up using property owners? Property for community-owned energy. So I haven't broached that subject yet because people power is new to me. But the concept of wanting to share power and own power is old to me. I'm trying real hard to, sell that concept to others, and I would appreciate knowing more about how to do that. What questions did they ask me? All kinds of annoying questions, that really put me over the edge myself. It's like I don't think I did a good pitch, so I left too many pitfalls. And when they asked questions and I had no answers, I kind of fumbled along. So basically, homeowners associations are always like that from banks, or from even when you want to refinance your property, because they know it's a group of people in a community with varying degree of understanding and motivation. But I think our story from People Power can be really pitched well to this kind of a living situation. And because of the people and our community financial picture, all of us being nearly on the same page about income, we are low income, first time home buyer group. We have 5 units. There are 3 other units right next to us, which are a different incorporation, but still that puts 8 units and multiple roofs. So I think if I get other time other than now, when I don't want to take up too much of the group's time, I think what I need uh, 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 for pitching the story and getting interest is what I have to educate myself in. But basically, if that works out well, I think these are really good, ambitious properties. Then, of course, a lot of other larger commercial property that I think we should go for, church that I think we should go for in the area, who are all, fairly progressive, and, they have a large outreach to community.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Thank you.
I will kind of stop there, but the bottom line is, the summary is, I am inexperienced in pitching this because people power just came to me only as of recent times, but my intention has always been to sell shared power, and I hope we can make this happen quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure, so we've heard so many different stories from so many different perspectives and angles. I want to open this floor up to see if there's any questions or if you have any insights that you want to share. It's seeing that we have 20 minutes left. We are actually going into reviewing the tools that we have built for you. So if you want to, if we can focus the questions more on like how we can reach out to people just in terms of in-person dynamic to help you overcome this uncertainty of right now, you're likely not going to see people in person. So like calling the people you know, or emailing people through listserv or in-person emails, how you want to reach out to them, how do you want to get any tips from the people who shared so far, feel free to ask. Margie? You're muted.
Okay, what about setting up, because I have two neighbors from across the street that I've already approached, and they were interested, they're homeowners. And I was thinking of setting up, if we could do like a Zoom call with like you and them and me, and then, after I gave them the, or just for them to have their questions answered. And what about that as a technique for other people? Like Ranil, if you want to approach other people, in your complex, can you have a Zoom call with Crystal? And she could maybe answer their questions, and Grayson and whatever.
Yeah, in my case, it's is a no. Because some people are not tech savvy, and we have to have buy-in by the whole 5 units. So the short answer is no. Even though I can speak to the majority, I don't think that's good enough. A majority decision is not enough in this small democracy of ours of 5 units. But I have hope to be able to communicate the idea through a new management company that I am looking to start working with. They are not new to us, but the concept is new to the group. We have been self-managed all this time, and I have been carrying the load a lot. And I don't get on well with everyone all the time because I don't think that's quite necessary. But it's like with an influence of outside management and trying to grab their attention to do this might be the way I want to go. But Zoom calls with my group is probably not going to work for the majority.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is in terms of speaking with people, and I know I mentioned it in the beginning, but I feel like I need to say it again. 2 questions. One is, what if someone already has solar on their house, but they want to be a storage person for the neighborhood? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, we could just have them fill out the form. I think the most important thing here is to get them interested in the possibility for us to build energy resiliency together, and then interested enough to fill out the technical analysis form so we can start the conversation around what that could look like. Because honestly, we don't know, we don't have a lot of answer for these things. It's mostly just like dreaming things up. And like Brandi had expressed, like it just kind of goes into this like circular conversation. Like there's so much information that's needed for us to have a real productive use of everyone's time after people is willing to share their technical analysis. Like we can't really talk about community benefit. We can't even talk about cost even, like without having an understanding of their specific site information. So we need them to fill out the technical analysis form.
Okay, that's important. And I have one other question. I want to understand what, like just some house, and let's say everything works out and they get it and they get the solar and they're a storage hub. I still don't understand what does that mean for the community. There's a brownout this summer, okay? So what do? I walk across the street and I can charge my phone. Is that it? What else could I do? What else would they do for me if they are a storage hub other than charging my cell phone?
Yeah, there's a lot. And actually Bruce here we actually been working on writing a piece. Bruce is writing a piece on just helping us understand what battery storage means. And like the ability for you to come to charge your phone or do other things, it really depends on the site. So we can't really engage that conversation without knowing more details about the site. But that's a really great question. Like, what exactly does battery storage do? Like, and how can we like share with the community? There are some level of technical information that we can all share and talk about, where Bruce will be like graciously publishing that on the People Power Owner Playground too. But if we don't have any burning questions, we can move on to looking at the tools, because we only have 15 minutes left, and maybe we can save some more questions. Like the whole idea here again is that we want to get people interested enough to fill out the technical analysis form so we can start the conversation. It's going to be a lot of back and forth supporting between you and the People Power staff, that's Grayson and myself. We'll be supporting you through this whole process, working with the property owner. If you don't have the capacity, it can even be the property owner with Grayson and myself to talk about a bunch of different details, and then we get back to you when we're ready to talk about the community piece. The fire season is coming, and we cannot wait for companies and nonprofit to come and save us. So we just want to try to figure out how we can make this easy and comfortable for you so we can get to it and get the answer to move the ball forward. And I'll pass this to Grayson to kind of give us an overview on the tools that the staff has created, so it can help you like get reminded, and some tools to reach out to people to feel comfortable.
Sweet. Thanks, Crystal. I'm Grayson, calling from the East Coast. Thanks all for sharing those stories. That was awesome. Yeah, I think Crystal's driving, so here we go. So I think it's good to just remember we're talking about the first step in what's a larger project here, which is finding sites so that we can know things like the cost, what the sites can provide, if they're even viable for hosting solar or storage. That's the first step we really want to zero in on. We've shown this slide in the past. It's sort of like a brief overview of this step. What we're about to do is hopefully go into two resources in particular that are really helpful for this find site step. But again, I just want to center the goal here for this step is to talk to 5 property owners and ask them to fill out a technical analysis form for their site. Just get them to that step so that we can start to think about all the ways that their site could work for the community around them. And the link you see here on the bottom of this slide is the link to that form, which is one of the things we're about to look at and dive into. So the 2 things we're going to look at are, one, this guide sheet that we've shared in the past and we'll share again, and we're going to look at it right now for reaching out to site hosts, as well as the form that, and by the way, when I say site host, it means the same thing as property owner. That might be confusing, but I guess the site host would be the property owner who actually ends up hosting a People Power project becomes a site host. So apologies if I use property owner and site host kind of interchangeably. And then, yeah, the next document we'll look at is just this form that property owners will ask them to fill out to see if their site is viable. It gives us the information to check it out. So without further ado, we can look at the first one. And this is the guide for site host development. And you can see on this slide, I'm about to share my screen and show the document, but this is the link for it. We'll share it in an email after this. We can put it in chat. It's on the People Power Playground. You can text one of us or call one of us or email one of us or Zoom one of us if you still need it. So yeah, I want to switch to my screen.
Have you all had the chance to look at it yet?
Yeah, can we get a show of hands of who's have trouble seeing everyone's screen? Well, I'm seeing some thumbs up, so that's encouraging. The goal for this document is to provide a bunch of different resources. You don't need to be able to read it all in one sitting. It's about 4 pages long. I'm going to go quickly through what all the different resources are, but it's a list of resources, and we encourage y'all to bookmark it and print it out and go back to it often if you run into questions as you're reaching out to site hosts or property owners. And I'll also note that this is a living document, so as we get feedback from y'all, as we think of new things, Crystal and I will be updating it. And when there are significant updates, we'll do our best to let y'all know either through the playground or through the newsletter emails. So just want to go quickly over what resources there are in this guide. So there's 5 sections that are in this agenda here. And I'll go through each really briefly and pause a couple times for questions. So the first one we wanted to lay out, and we've talked about this a lot today, and I think I could see us already some edits we could make, but is just sort of a central pitch for why People Power and not a for-profit solar company that you can use when you first reach out to property owners in your conversations later, but just I think really good to ground yourself in talking to property owners about People Power in particular. And then really drawing the differences between what People Power offers versus those private companies like Tesla and Solar City, etc. The next section is sort of a loose outline for what we see the process of, I guess an outline for what we see as being the process for finding site hosts. Not so much installing solar, but so I can even just change this. But just reminding ourselves that we're probably only going to be able to move forward with 1 out of 10 properties because of either the roof is shaded or it's old or there's not enough energy usage. And then breaking down the process into 3 sort of basic steps that I think it's important to think about the finding site hosts process in terms of these 3 sub-steps. So the first one is just reaching out, whether it's a friend or someone who's more of a stranger, with an initial pitch. The second would be the follow-up process, which is sort of like the process that we've heard so many people describe on this call of answering people's questions. And to Margie's question earlier, whether it's a Zoom call or an email or a text conversation, Crystal and I are definitely available to hop on and be present for these question sessions with property owners, potential site hosts. And then the third step is just sort of that last step of this process, which is getting them to fill out the form once they seem interested enough in the idea to see if their property could work for People Power. And so at that point, we're at a point where Crystal and I will have the data, People Power will have the data to see if their property will even work, and we can then get back in touch with you and the property owner to start thinking about how this project could actually work for the community once we know the details. So just looking at the clock, I think I'm going to go through this document and then just pause for some questions so we can make sure to get through everything before the half hour. The next section, this is the third section, is a sample script that we wanted to include. If you've never talked to someone about people power or about solar or about batteries before, it can definitely seem daunting. Hopefully it seems way less daunting after hearing from folks today. But this script is hopefully a helpful template for reaching out to people over the phone, over email. Encourage y'all to take it, edit it, shorten it, add parts. Obviously, if you have a previous relationship with someone, then something this stale might might come off kind of weird. But hopefully, there's parts that everyone can use from this script to sort of template your own way that you reach out to property owners in your network. The fourth part that I think is really important to solidify and that we've encountered is when a property owner fills out the technical viability form, it's not a commitment. And I think it's important for us as people power owners, as well as the property owner, to understand this, because it's easy to start investing a lot of time into a site and thinking about all the ways it can work before we know the actual details about the site that would enable those things to work. At the same time, for the property owner, if they feel like filling out this form is a big commitment, and that if it works, then they're going to go solar with people power, and that's that, then it makes it seem probably more daunting than it needs to seem. So we just want to be clear that this filling out the form is the first step in a longer process. And that's something that I think can't be said enough, both to ourselves and to the property owners we reach out to. The last section in this document is an FAQ section, and I think this is something we'll definitely update a lot, especially after this call, after hearing from folks. But I think it does detail some important FAQs that we've already heard before, questions that property owners might have about upfront costs, about their responsibilities, about legal risk that they might be putting themselves into, what happens when they sell their property, what happens to the solar, is that going to affect their ability to sell their home, what does this process of putting solar on their house look like after they fill out the form, and then what are the differences between people power and other solar companies. So just given the time, I can't dive into all the answers here, but the questions are here and they are answered, hopefully. And so just want to be clear that this resource exists, and we will continue to update it as you're reaching out to property owners.
And I also turn on the comment function. So if you have any questions, you can always comment directly on this document and then we could just respond to you right away too. Or obviously you can just email us or message us on the owner playground too. Do you have any questions before Grayson move on to the form that you're going to ask the property owners to fill out? Let's dive in.
All right. Just one more thing. If you want to if you're not familiar with Google Docs like this, you can comment by clicking on this thing here and typing in a comment. So we will share the link for this form, but I'm just going to jump over to it here. We've shown it on past presentations too. It's bit.ly/go solar people power, I believe.
Yes.
Crystal can share it in chat. But anyways, this is the form that when we send the link to property owners to fill out the technical viability form, this is the form. So again, this form is for the property owner to fill out, not the people power owner. and it gives Crystal and I, People Power staff, the data that we need to look into their property and see if it can host solar, if it can host storage, what kind of solar, what kind of storage, how much it might cost, how much savings for the site host and the community it might create. So I'll just quickly go through all the information we're asking for here so that y'all can be familiar with what you're sending to property owners when you do send them the link to this form. So it asks the property owner for their email address, the address of their property. It asks them if they own this property. This is just in case there's a misunderstanding. I mean, ideally, it's property owners that are filling out this form, but if there's a misunderstanding and they don't, we want to be sure. And it asks if they could refer us to the property owner if they're not. I think the most important part of this form is it asks if they have access to the electricity bills for their property. So if they live there, they probably do, but if they're a landlord with multiple tenants, then it's most likely those tenants that have the electricity bills, which would mean that there's going to be an additional step after this to try and get those bills. If they do have access to the electricity bills for the property, we ask for them to consent for us to download that. We use this tool called Utility API that basically asks them to log into their online PG&E account and authorize People Power to download their last year's worth of energy bills. And then include a contact email for that PG&E account, because we'll need that as well. And if they're not comfortable with letting us download their data, then there's plenty of other ways that we can work to figure it out. It's just very convenient if they're willing to let us download their energy data. So we really encourage folks to say yes here. Lastly, yeah, we ask for their name, and then we ask which People Power owner has referred them in case we haven't heard from y'all directly. But in general, we imagine that we'll be looped in and I'll be in touch, you as the People Power owner, us as People Power staff, and then them as the property owner through this process. And there's a space for comments. So unfortunately, we're at the half hour, but I'm glad we got to run through these resources. Oh yeah, and there's a cute cartoon and a nice little video at the end as well. So hopefully that gives a better idea of what exactly these resources are that we've been talking about. I see there's been some comments in Zoom that I haven't been able to see, but oh, it's just you. Yeah, hopefully that's insightful.
Do we have any questions here about how to use it and to feel comfortable? Because just to respect everyone's time, feel free to ask right now. Is someone unmuted? Hello.
Margie's raising her hand.
Yeah, so the thing is, we would send them to that, what's it called, to that link, and then they would fill it out and it would go back to you. Are you saying that in the process it's more important to have the conversation first and answer all their questions before they fill out this link, or would they fill out the link and then meet and talk about it? How do those steps go?
That's a great question. I think in general, we want to answer as many questions as we need to for them to be comfortable filling out the form, and we can always answer more questions after they've filled out the form, but we don't want to rush people to fill out the form before they feel comfortable. So hopefully that's a helpful answer. The other thing is that they're gonna have questions throughout this. So if they're gonna fill out the form, we're gonna look at their property and we're gonna know all these new things, and then there's gonna be a whole other round of questions. So there's not really going to be a point where the questions end. We're still talking with Laura Jo about questions she has today. So.
I have one last quickie and then I'll shut up. I spoke to one neighbor and she said to me, so when I do this, do I automatically become a member of the cooperative? But I still don't even know, does that mean that she's an owner like us because she offered her roof? Does she have to put money in? What does that mean?
She's an owner. Yeah. So we have a whole class of subscriber owners in People Power that are just people that purchase power or other services from the cooperative. Right now, it's just Laura Jo and her tenant are the only two. But yeah, if you don't have to buy shares, you would be an owner. You would have voting rights. Yeah.
Great. Respecting everyone's time. I know we're at time and a lot of people had to drop off already. Wanted to make sure we all feel good. But I'm going to reach out to every single one of you individually just to see how you're feeling, because this process is going to be a fun process, and we don't want you to feel lonely doing this, especially if you're reaching out to your people. And with so much going on in the world right now, it's just easy to be distracted. And with the fire season happening, there's a lot that we can do right now to be prepared for it. And we're in the crunch time to get our communities as resilient as possible with energy for all of us. So thank you all. If there's any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and jump in, but enjoy the lovely weekend and happy Sunshine Day, Good Friday, everything. Passover, thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know I didn't say much. I was working on listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Rest
you
well.
all for all your work that everyone does.
Likewise.